Imagine discovering the grave of one of the most powerful rulers in history. You expect to find a skeleton, a crown, perhaps even a name carved into stone. Instead, you find a ship, nearly 90 feet long, buried beneath an ordinary hill. Inside are breathtaking treasures unlike anything ever discovered in early England. Gold that still shines after 13 centuries. Weapons crafted for a warrior king. A helmet so extraordinary it has become the symbol of an entire civilization. Yet the person these treasures belong to is missing. No skeleton, no inscription, no certainty. For more than 80 years, archaeologists have argued over a single question. Who was buried inside the Sutton Hoo ship? Some believe they already know the answer. Others say history has been looking at the wrong king all along. Tonight, we reopen one of Britain's greatest archaeological mysteries, not to admire the treasure, but to find the ruler who vanished without a trace. The story begins not with kings or treasure, but with a quiet hill overlooking the River Deben in Suffolk, England. Today, the landscape feels peaceful. Rolling fields stretch towards the horizon. The river winds silently through the countryside. Nothing about this place suggests it once stood at the centre of a powerful kingdom. Yet hidden beneath the grass were 18 mysterious burial mounds. For centuries, local people wondered what they contained. Some believed they were ancient graves. Others dismissed them as nothing more than natural hills shaped by time. No one imagined that one of them concealed a discovery that would rewrite English history. The woman who changed everything was not a famous archaeologist. She wasn't even a historian. Her name was Edith Pretty. She lived at Sutton Hoo House, overlooking the strange mounds every single day. Unlike everyone else, she couldn't ignore them. What if they weren't just hills? What if they were trying to tell a forgotten story? In 1938, Edith made a decision that would change archaeology forever. She hired a local excavator named Basil Brown. At first glance, Brown didn't look like the man who would uncover one of Britain's greatest discoveries. He had no university degree, no prestigious academic title, no famous museum behind him. But he possessed something equally valuable: patience. Years spent studying the Suffolk landscape had given him an instinct few professionals could match. Brown believed the earth spoke to those willing to listen. So, armed with little more than simple tools and extraordinary determination, he began digging. The first burial mounds offered only disappointment. Evidence suggested that grave robbers had broken into them centuries earlier. Any treasure they once held had long since disappeared. Many people would have stopped there, but Brown wasn't convinced. One mound stood apart from all the others. It was larger, higher, more carefully positioned. If someone important had ever been buried at Sutton Hoo, this was where they would be. In the spring of 1939, Brown climbed the largest mound and began removing the sandy soil one careful layer at a time. Nothing appeared unusual, not at first. Then, a single iron rivet emerged from the earth. An old nail? Perhaps. Brown kept digging. Another rivet appeared, then another, then dozens, soon hundreds, each one perfectly aligned. Slowly, an astonishing shape began to emerge beneath his feet. Brown stepped back. He wasn't looking at scattered pieces of metal. He was looking at the outline of something enormous, something no one expected to find buried beneath an English hill. A ship. An entire ship. And this was only the beginning, because hidden at its centre was a chamber no one had entered for more than 1,300 years. The ship was there, But the wood was gone. After more than 13 centuries beneath the Suffolk soil, the enormous vessel had almost completely disappeared. Only thousands of iron rivets remained, and those rivets revealed something extraordinary. The ship was nearly 27 metres long, about 90 feet. Its wooden planks had been carefully overlapped and fastened together, creating a powerful vessel built to survive the North Sea. But this ship had not been buried because it was broken. It had been deliberately placed here. The evidence suggested that the vessel had been dragged inland from the River Deben and positioned beneath the burial mound. Imagine the scene. A massive ship pulled across the land, a burial chamber constructed at its centre. And then, slowly, the entire vessel covered with earth until it disappeared from view. Whoever organised this funeral wanted the ship to become a monument. But why? Across northern Europe, ships were closely connected with travel, power and death. For a ruler or warrior, a ship could symbolise a final journey into another world. At Sutton Hoo, that symbolism appears to have been taken to an extraordinary scale. And now the archaeologists had reached the most important part of the ship, the burial chamber. It had somehow escaped the grave robbers who had plundered other mounds nearby. For 13 centuries it had remained hidden. Then the first objects began to emerge. Gold. And suddenly the ghost ship became something far more remarkable. It was a royal treasure chamber. The first flash of gold changed the excavation. What looked like an ancient burial suddenly became something extraordinary. Inside the chamber were objects of astonishing craftsmanship. Gold shoulder clasps, a massive gold buckle, fine ornaments decorated with garnets, and a sword whose fittings were covered in gold and precious stones. These weren't ordinary possessions, they were symbols of power. But then came the discovery that would become the most recognisable object from Sutton Hoo, a pile of badly corroded iron fragments. At first they seemed almost worthless, but conservators began piecing them together. Slowly a face emerged, a nose, eyebrows, a moustache, and a dragon-like crest. It was the Sutton Hoo helmet. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, revealing a level of artistic skill that challenged the old image of early medieval England as a primitive and isolated society. Then came another surprise. Among the burial objects were silver vessels associated with the Byzantine world, objects that had travelled enormous distances before reaching East Anglia. The message was becoming clear. This wasn't the grave of an isolated warlord. Whoever was buried here belonged to a powerful world connected to distant kingdoms through trade, diplomacy, and gift exchange. And yet, amid all this wealth, something was missing. The one thing archaeologists desperately wanted to find: the body. There was no preserved skeleton, no inscription, no name. The treasure could tell them how powerful the person had been, but it couldn't tell them who they were. And that left the greatest clue still waiting to be solved. Who could have possessed such extraordinary wealth? For historians, one candidate quickly rose above the others: a powerful ruler of East Anglia, King Rædwald. The treasure had revealed the status of the person buried at Sutton Hoo. But now came the harder question. Who was he? There was no inscription, no royal seal, no surviving body that could give us a name. So historians turned to the few written records that survived from early Anglo-Saxon England. One name stood out: Rædwald, King of East Anglia. Rædwald ruled during the early 7th century, when England was divided into competing kingdoms. East Anglia was one of the most powerful, and according to the medieval historian Bede, Rædwald became one of the most influential kings of his generation. The dates are intriguing. Rædwald is believed to have died around AD 624 or 625. Scientific dating places the Sutton Hoo burial in roughly the same period. Then there's the location. Sutton Hoo lies within the territory of the ancient kingdom of East Anglia, overlooking the River Deben, a major waterway connecting the region to the North Sea. The burial itself also fits the profile of a powerful ruler, a massive ship, extraordinary weapons, gold and garnet jewellery. Luxury objects from across Europe. Everything seems to point towards someone at the very top of society. And Rædwald fits that picture remarkably well. But there is a problem, a very big one. There is no proof. Nothing discovered at Sutton Hoo actually says the words King Rædwald. The identification is based on clues that fit together, not on a direct inscription. Another member of the East Anglian royal family could potentially have been buried there. A prince, another ruler, or someone whose name has completely disappeared from history. So Rædwald remains the leading candidate, but not a proven identity. And then another clue made the mystery even more complicated. The objects buried with this unknown ruler seem to reflect two very different worlds. The old pagan traditions of Anglo-Saxon England and the rapidly spreading religion of Christianity. Could Sutton Hoo reveal not just who this ruler was, but what kind of world he lived in? The Sutton Hoo burial raises another fascinating question. What did this mysterious ruler believe? In the early 7th century, England was undergoing a major religious transformation. For generations, Anglo-Saxon communities had followed older pagan traditions. But Christianity was spreading rapidly. Kings were converting, missionaries were establishing churches, and ancient beliefs were beginning to collide with a new faith. Sutton Hoo appears to capture this moment of transition. The ship burial itself reflects traditions associated with the older Anglo-Saxon world. Weapons, treasure, and the ship all suggest a ceremonial burial connected with status, power, and perhaps a journey into the afterlife. But among the objects were two remarkable silver spoons bearing the names Saul and Paul, names strongly associated with Christianity. And this creates an intriguing connection to Rædwald. According to Bede, Rædwald accepted Christianity, but later maintained both Christian and pagan practices. Whether every detail of Bede's account is accurate is impossible to know, but it illustrates the complicated world in which these rulers lived. Conversion wasn't necessarily an overnight change. A king could encounter Christianity while still maintaining traditions inherited from generations before him. Sutton Hoo may reflect exactly that kind of cultural transition, an ancient burial tradition, containing objects connected to a new religion, all within the grave of someone who may have stood at the centre of this changing world. But there is still one problem. Even if the burial reflects Rædwald's world, it doesn't prove that Rædwald himself lies beneath the mound. The body has disappeared. The name is missing. And the evidence can only take us so far. After more than 13 centuries, we're left with clues, not certainty. So now there is only one thing left to do. Put every clue together and ask the question that has haunted Sutton Hoo since its discovery. Was this really the tomb of King Rædwald? After more than 80 years of excavation, research and debate, we return to the question that began this investigation: who was buried at Sutton Hoo? The evidence is impressive. The burial dates to the early 7th century. It lies within the ancient kingdom of East Anglia. The wealth suggests someone of extraordinary status. The ship, weapons, gold and international treasures all point toward royalty, and the dates of King Rædwald's reign and death make him a compelling candidate. But compelling isn't the same as proven. There is no inscription naming Rædwald, no royal seal, no surviving skeleton that can definitively identify him. The strongest evidence is circumstantial. The dates fit, the location fits, the status fits, but the final piece of the puzzle is missing. So the honest verdict is simple. Sutton Hoo may be the burial of King Rædwald, but we cannot say that with certainty. And perhaps that uncertainty is exactly what makes the discovery so fascinating. Because Sutton Hoo changed much more than our understanding of one mysterious king. Before the discovery, early Anglo-Saxon England was often portrayed as an isolated and culturally backward period. The ship burial told a very different story. These people were skilled shipbuilders, master craftsmen, warriors, traders, and rulers connected to a much wider European world. The so-called Dark Ages were not simply an age of darkness. They were a world of extraordinary complexity that had been largely hidden from us. And that may be Sutton Hoo's greatest legacy. The person buried beneath that mound may remain unknown, but the civilization around him is no longer forgotten. Today, the burial mounds still overlook the River Devon. The ship is gone, the body is gone, the name is gone, but the clues remain. A helmet, a sword, a handful of gold, thousands of iron rivets, and one question that refuses to disappear. Was this the tomb of King Rædwald? Perhaps. Perhaps not. Until new evidence emerges, the mystery remains open. And that is the strange power of archaeology. Sometimes the greatest discoveries don't give us all the answers. They simply teach us which questions are worth asking. This is Stylus and Sword. And if you want to uncover more forgotten kingdoms, lost rulers, and mysteries buried beneath history, join us for the next investigation.